You'd think after the Titanic, boat designers would have figured out how to make their work a little more sturdy, but not quite. Then again, who are we to judge? We've never built a functioning boat. There are many ships out there that have, rather sadly, gone the way of the Titanic, lost to the depths of the waters. These are sinking ships caught on camera. Number 15. MTS Oceanos, South Africa. When out on the sea and things go wrong, who's the first person you turn to for assurance? Well, the captain, of course. They're like the person in charge of an airplane or even the driver of a car. Essentially, they're in charge and should know what's what. Well, not in this case. The captain of this ship decided to literally abandon ship like a rat and leave all his passengers on board. Fortunately, everyone on board the cruise ship Oceanos survived, but it was the entertainers who came to the rescue, not the captain. He was long gone. Rescue helicopters came to the aid of 571 people on board the stricken vessel, ensuring everyone was safe and accounted for. The dramatic operation took just 90 minutes and was completed just in time, as footage shows the luxury liner succumbing to the waves a mile from South Africa's Indian Ocean coast near the village of Coffee Bay. Rescue boats were guided to the vessel by the ship's entertainers, who had used the radio to alert them of their plight. Caught in a rough storm, the Oceanos was taking on water, and the captain was nowhere to be found. He and some of the crew were convicted of negligence by a Greek board of inquiry shortly after the incident, and fair enough too. Like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Now it's time for the odd topic. This photo, caught on camera, shows an absolute behemoth of a ship sadly meeting its end as it began to tip below the water's surface. From what we've learned, the exact nature of what caused the ship to start sinking remains a little bit of a mystery. The most common theory is that it simply could not take the weight of the weapons on board. What do you think? As always, comment down below with the hashtag OddTopic and let us know your opinion in relation to what we just showed on screen. Let's move on to the next one. Number 14. Poaching Vessel Thunder. Built in Norway in 1969, the Thunder was an outlaw fishing vessel that sunk in 2015. At the time, Interpol believed it was part of the Bandit 6, a group of 6 fishing vessels that illegally fished for Patagonian toothfish in the Southern Ocean. Over the years, Thunder went under many names, including Arctic Ranger, Typhoon 1, Kuko, and Wuhan N4, and was last registered in Lagos, Nigeria. But oddly, it was officially delisted just a week before it sank. The ship had been pursued for 110 days by 2 Sea Shepherd Conservation Society vessels, Bob Barker and the Sam Simon. This pursuit formed part of Operation Icefish and had covered 110 miles from Antarctic waters to Sao Tome and Principe. On April 6, 2015, the Thunder sunk under suspicious circumstances. After coming to a complete stop off the western coast of Africa, the crew, that consisted of 30 Indonesians and 10 officers from Spain, Chile, and Portugal, came out with life jackets on and threw a ladder over the side. They disembarked onto life rafts and were all rescued by the Sea Shepherd ships waiting nearby. To this day, the sinking has been considered suspicious as the crew went to great lengths to ensure it sunk. Normally, everything would be done to maintain the ship's buoyancy for as long as possible, but the Thunder's doors and hatches were all tied open and the fish hold was also left ajar. Whether it was sunk on purpose, we may never know, but the footage of its last moments is definitely worth a watch. Number 13. Sinking Ship, Stellar Banner in Brazilian Coast. giant ore carrier, the Stellar Banner, owned by Polaris Shipping from Korea, had a slightly more complicated path to its eventual sinking than most. The ship had only been on the water for 4 years when it ran aground off the coast of São Luís on February 24, 2020. Damage to the bow sustained by the accident caused the ship to develop a heavy starboard list, and the crew members were immediately evacuated. Loaded with 275,000 tons of iron ore, the Stellar Banner was on its way to Qingdao, China when it got into difficulty. The salvage operation took months to complete and included the unloading of the ship's cargo and the removal of approximately 3,500 tons of fuel oil. This all helped the ship to right by 12 degrees from its list and enabled some of the submerged decks to emerge from the water. The boat was still considered unseaworthy and it couldn't be towed to shore, so it was temporarily refloated and taken to deeper waters for inspection before being sunk on Friday, June 12th. Number 12. USS Radford sinks. If only this ship could have spoken, the stories it would have told of the many excursions it was part of during its lifetime. Built by Ingalls Shipbuilding, this Spruance-class destroyer was launched on March 1, 1975. Used by members of the United States Army, it was named USS Arthur W. Radford after Admiral Arthur W. Radford, the first naval officer to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The destroyer was commissioned on April 16, 1977 and decommissioned on March 18, 2003. It served 26 years mainly as a ready gunfire support ship against forces threatening peacekeeping missions. On August 10, 2011, the ship was sunk off the coast of Delaware and now forms part of an artificial reef at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. As the ship sunk, former Combat Systems Officer Douglas Warner and a few of his fellow seamen paid homage to their former home by lighting up a cigar each. The scene was also watched by 300 people from the safety of the Cape May/Lewis ferry floating nearby. Initially, it didn't look like the ship would actually sink, but once the water hit the bigger holes, it went down like a pack of cards. It is now known as the Del Jersey Land Reef, the largest of its kind on the East Coast. Number 11. Boat sinking caught on tape. Camotes. If you aren't a fan of the water and a bit of a nervous passenger, you might feel a sense of relief when your ship comes into port. I mean, what could go wrong now? It's like the plane when it's hitting the tarmac. You would think your safety was assured. Well, that might not necessarily be the case. If this clip of a boat sinking at the Consuelo port on Camotes Island, Cebu, is anything to go by. The Philippine Coast Guard was called to the rescue when this boat began taking on water soon after it was docked on August 31st, 2019. The movement of a 10-wheeler truck loaded with cement is believed to have started a chain of events that led to the eventual sinking of the MV Mika Marie 8 of Jamelia Shipping that still had 22 people on board. Central Visayas Public Information Officer Lieutenant Junior Grade Michael John Encina said that as the cement truck was getting out of the ship, the vessel listed to one side and started taking on water. It had come from Danao City in mainland Cebu and had been carrying 149 passengers, 18 crew members, and 11 rolling cargoes when it arrived into port. Fortunately, most of the passengers had already disembarked when the drama began to unfold, but all passengers and crew left on the ship were rescued unharmed. But it was quite the sight for those with their feet firmly planted on the ground as they filmed the stricken boat slowly tipping over onto its side in full view of the dock. Number 10. Cargo ship sinking in the Yangtze River. This footage taken of a cargo ship flipping completely over and sinking within minutes in the Yangtze River is unbelievable. In fact, if it hadn't been filmed, many would consider it nothing more than a tall tale. But it's actually true. The whole event played out on camera as shocked onlookers filmed the terrifying moment the Xuan Long 818 cargo ship hit rocks during docking procedures. The ship was carrying 2,000 tons of cement to Chongqing when the accident happened and was seen rolling over onto its side and completely capsizing in the blink of an eye. Within minutes, all that could be seen moving through the murky waters of the Yangtze River was the boat's upturned hull. An enormous hole had been ripped into its underside, and the ailing boat had to be dragged to the shore. Although it all appeared to happen very quickly, the 7 crew members on board were all able to be rescued, safe and unharmed. Number 9. Quinta S sinking ship in Corpus Christi, Texas. This old freighter was filmed getting a second chance at life, although it'll now be one under the sea rather than on top of it. The 155-foot Quinta S was sunk in 2014 and now plays host to marine life rather than its crew and cargo. Nearing its 40th birthday, the freighter slipped into her watery grave in the Gulf of Mexico offshore from Mustang Island in approximately 75 feet of water. She now becomes part of Texas Parks and Wildlife Department's Artificial Reef Program and will be the largest ship to have been reefed since the 473-foot Texas Clipper was sunk 17 miles off South Padre Island in 2006. Her presence will further enhance an existing site known as the Corpus Christi Nearshore Reef. The reef, officially known as MU-775, comprises a huge 169 acres and is home to 470 concrete pyramids and several thousand tons of concrete culverts. Its latest addition, the Quinta S, was first launched in Japan in 1976. Considered nothing more now than a rusty, outdated cargo vessel with no historical significance, she now has a new lease on life as not only an underwater habitat for marine life, but as an interesting destination for scuba divers. So there's definitely life in the old girl yet. Number 8. Drone captures sinking of 180-foot cargo ship Voici Bernadette. From a drug smuggling freighter to life as part of an artificial reef in the waters of Florida, the Voici Bernadette has had a complete change of scenery. In a plot straight out of a Hollywood movie, the freighter now has a fresh perspective on life and will enjoy visits from marine life rather than dangerous drug barons. The 180-foot vessel was seized in Miami by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Authority during a drug bust in 2018. Local government officials and other organizations keen on promoting reefing projects thought she might make a welcome addition to the Florida Reef. These projects not only make life a little more exciting for ocean dwellers, they also make great tourist destinations for divers. Florida also has a love for intentionally sunk warships and merchant vessels, with around 3,300 artificial reefs in the state. Not only that, but the Voici Bernadette adds further interest with her colorful history. Drone footage shows her being taken out on her final voyage, escorted by 2 tugboats. Laden with weight and with water pumped into her hull, Voici Bernadette slowly tilts into the port side before sinking below the waves. What a peaceful end for an old lady with a checkered past. Number 7. Sinking a Mexican Navy warship. GoPro footage of a Mexican Navy warship sinking below the waves represents a peaceful end to a life spent in the thick of military operations. The AMR Uribe was an offshore patrol vessel that entered service in 1982. It was the lead ship in its class. A multi-role patrol craft, it had twin funnels and a helicopter deck. Considered a relatively small naval vessel, the Uribe was designed for coastal defense, border protection, immigration law enforcement, and search and rescue duties. Due to their size, they were also relatively inexpensive to produce, so are one of the most common types of warships in the world. Unfortunately, after years of service protecting a country and her crew, these old warships are no longer required, and it's to the scrapyard they go. This specimen, however, is moving on to bigger and better things. It now lies off the coast of Rosarito, Mexico, having been sunk to help create the first artificial reef in Baja California, the Rosarito Underwater Park. Essentially, the warship is still serving its people, just from a slightly different vantage point. Number 6. Trawler sinks near Shetland Islands. This story is all too common and often doesn't end well either. Fishing trawlers have a grim reputation when it comes to death by drowning. Whether the crew are unprepared or simply a freak accident, many days out spent fishing have ended in disaster over the years. And it's not just limited to one part of the world either. The ocean is a cruel mistress, and certainly not one to be messed with. The crew on board the fishing boat Ocean Way would definitely agree, and they are one of the very few lucky ones. Their fishing boat's demise was caught on camera, and thankfully, they were plucked from the water soon after. The drama unfolded in 2017 when the crew on board the vessel discovered it was taking on water just off Shetland. They radioed for help, and a lifeboat from Lerwick and the Coast Guard helicopter were sent to the scene. As the rescuers arrived, the fishermen jumped into the sea. Less than a minute later, the Ocean Way descended to her watery grave. Weather conditions were atrocious, with rescuers saying it was difficult to get the lifeboat alongside the fishermen. Fortunately, all 5 were fished out of the sea alive and well, just a tad cold from their unplanned swim. Number 5. Stern of stricken New Zealand ship finally sinks. On October 5, 2011, a container ship, the MV Rena, ran aground on the Astrolabe Reef as it was sailing from Napier to Tauranga. Traveling at a speed of 17 knots in clear weather and carrying 1,368 containers, the ship hit the reef. It then began to list. With 8 containers containing hazardous materials and 1,700 tons of heavy fuel oil and 200 tons of marine diesel oil on board, the surrounding wildlife and popular fishing spots were both in jeopardy. By October 9th, an oil slick 5 kilometers long could be seen, and oil began to wash ashore at Mount Maunganui Beach on October 10th. Further bad weather caused the ship to shift further onto the reef, and the crew were evacuated. More damage to the ship meant more oil leaking. A total of 70 containers fell off the boat and into the sea, but none were hazardous. These containers started washing up on Motiti Island, and surrounding beaches were closed. 3 months later, the ship split in 2, with one part descending to the ocean floor. And on April 4th, 2012, the final piece of the puzzle disappeared from view, as the broken up ship's stern finally sank after waves had been pounding it for days. More debris and a light sheen of oil could be seen following the stern's departure. This spelled the end for the ship that has gone down in New Zealand's maritime history as the one that caused the country's worst maritime environmental disaster ever. Number 4. MV Rock Carrier sank near Mumbai. When a ship sinks, it's not always just the lives on board that need to be considered. The lives of the marine life whose home the ship is visiting must be considered as well. What happens when a ship carrying 60,000 tons of coal and about 290 tons of furnace oil and 50 tons of fuel oil on board? This was the question needing to be asked when the cargo ship MV Rock Carrier sunk off Mumbai in August 2011. Authorities had to work quickly to mop up the mess, as the oil was said to be leaking at a rate of about 1.5 to 2 tons per hour. It was soon discovered on beaches and in the water near the city's shoreline, and an aerial survey found that a slick had spread up to 7 nautical miles from the vessel and needed to be neutralized immediately. Oil spill dispersants were used to help clean up the mess, but not before wildlife in the area were put at risk. The 220-meter ship got into difficulties in stormy weather whilst traveling from Indonesia to Gujarat. A distress call was sent out, and all crew were rescued before the vessel sank. Its last few minutes above the waterline were caught on camera. Number 3. Wrecked cargo ship sinking in New Zealand. A container ship owned by Greek shipping company Costamare Inc. ran aground near the Bay of Plenty off New Zealand's North Island resort city of Tauranga on the 5th of October 2011. There was no real reason for the grounding. In fact, it was a clear day as the ship headed into port from Napier. Following a court case where the captain and the navigation officer were found guilty and jailed, it was found that the Rena hit the astrolabe reef due to navigation errors. The resulting grounding caused New Zealand's worst maritime pollution disaster as the container ship spewed oil and debris. After the initial cleanup, the wreck of the Rena was battered by consistent heavy winds and rough seas, and it was reported on October 14, 2011 that it had cracked. The bow and stern were effectively being held together by the ship's internal structure and the reef itself. Finally, on January 8, 2012, it broke in two in a storm, and the bow disappeared under the water. A boom was quickly put in place to prevent oil from further fouling key beaches, and the Wildlife Response Center was put on high alert. Number 2. The sinking of the Algo port. You would think that before you decided to tow a ship that was to undergo repairs, that it would at least be seaworthy, wouldn't you? Well, it would appear that doesn't have to be a requirement, at least if the sinking of the MV Algo port is anything to go by. Footage of the ship breaking in two and sinking in the East China Sea south of Japan shows just how dangerous towing a vessel can be. The incident happened on September 6, 2009, whilst the Algo port was being towed from Panama to a Chinese repair yard for conversion. Pacific Hickory, a tug operated by Vancouver-based Island Tug and Barge, had taken on the task of delivering the ship to its destination, but it was a decision they almost came to regret. The Algo port was believed to be following in the footsteps of her fleetmate, MV Algo Bay, that had received a whole new forebody. The cost of the refit was estimated to be approximately $65 million. However, the company ended up gaining $2 million instead with the insurance payout. Tropical Storm Daguan was believed to be responsible for the encounter with rough seas that proved Algo Port's ultimate demise. Number 1. Sinking of the Kraken. The giant steel ship, the Kraken, was sunk on January 20th, 2017. It, along with many other ships, including old World War II ships, now forms part of the coolest artificial reefs ever. The U.S. Texas Parks and Wildlife Department's artificial reef program sank the 371-foot cargo vessel 67 miles off the coast of Galveston. It is hoped that over time, fish, coral, and other invertebrate will be drawn to the reef, and so too will divers and anglers. Artificial reefs have become quite popular over the years as they enhance the marine environment by encouraging new inhabitants to the area. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Artificial Program is funded through industry partnerships and grants and was created to improve marine habitats. Not only that, but it's proving quite the tourist attraction. The Kraken itself is located close to the Flower Gardens Marine Sanctuary, which also makes it one of the top dive locations in the Gulf of Mexico. A handy plus for a ship that thought its days of human interaction were over. There are some ships that capsize purely by accident, and others that meet their demise at the hands of humans. Whatever the case may be, a ship sinking under the ocean's surface is quite the sight. Whether it can be enjoyed or not obviously depends on the circumstances because, as we know, many lives have been lost in the hands of the sea. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time!